Thinking about doing this little session for weeks and weeks, and feel really honoured and privileged to be here and sharing time with you. My name's Jude. This is my wife Kerry down the back there. So we're going to, I'm going to talk to you for about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. It's up to you. And depends what you want to talk about. I've got a whole lot of things that I want to throw out there for you to consider. But I'm really open to going with the flow today and fielding questions about anything. Really, anything to do with God in particular. That's my thing. And I come from a background of teaching in schools for about 20 years. Year 7 to year 12 students in various schools in Sydney, and loved it, absolutely loved it. It's the reason I wanted to become a teacher. Love doing it, and I now work for a bishop in Wollongong, and we look after all the guys in state schools. So there's about 10,000 students in state schools every week, just in our region. And really utilise a whole lot of guys connected with the youth missions and that. I've got two daughters, Tara and Rachel. Tara's working today. She's first year uni, studying OT, and Rachel's madly getting ready for the HSC up in New South Wales. I don't think you guys go through those torturous things called the HSC exams down here. You do it, they torture you in other ways, because she's got about a week and a half until the exams, and so she's hitting that pretty hard. I come to you today as someone who firmly believes in God. I am a cradle Catholic, and I believe in God and have done since, always. That's not to say I haven't questioned. I've asked some really, really serious questions about my faith, and other people have too. And I think if you don't do that, and you just go through life accepting what you've been brought up as, or accepting what other people have told you without critically questioning it, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're selling your faith short. Because from my experience, when I've asked those questions of my faith has had the answers. Sometimes I've had to do a bit of digging. Sometimes I've had to be honest with myself about why I was asking those questions. But at the same time too, in the end, my faith has been able to answer for me all of those big questions of life. So I often get up and talk about science and faith. And I don't say that as someone who's done a science degree, but someone who's got a real interest in it. My background is in geography, history, economics and religious education. That's what I used to do in schools. But I do love, and always have loved, talking about my belief in God. And I suppose at one point in time, arguing with people about whether or not God exists. I don't think there's much value in that in many ways, because my experience is very different to other people's experience. But I'm going to talk to you about, hopefully today, the reasonableness of my faith, and hopefully draw you into an understanding that if you do believe in God, you know what? You're not an idiot. But if you don't believe in God, it's quite reasonable the questions you're asking. And I encourage you to keep asking them truthfully, and to truthfully seek the answers. Because I believe our God has the answers for all the sort of questions that you might be asking. So I got asked to do a question answer this question: why do I believe? And I can't begin to tell you the number of times I've been asked that question in my life. When I was at school, I used to go to mass every day, because my dad did. Because we'd go for a surf usually beforehand, we'd go for a swim down at Cronulla. And it wasn't particularly because I was very holy, it was because, well, if I went to mass, I've got to go to school straight afterwards and then to play touch footy and cricket from about 7:30 onwards. So I had an extra hour of sport before school started. But in saying that, my faith was very much wrapped up in an experience of my family, an experience of my family. And I'm really, really grateful for that. But there had, as I said to you, become points in time where I had to ask questions about that. My mates knew this. And I had a nickname at school, Father Jude, which is interesting. And it was good in many, many ways. And lots and lots of guys at various points in time would challenge me about that, sometimes quite aggressively, and sometimes quite sincerely. I remember getting a tap on the shoulder when I went to year 11. We went 7 to 10 boys' school, year 11 and 12 went down a place called De La Salle, Cronulla. And when I touched that line, I get this tap on the shoulder from this bloke who I used to play footy with, and we hadn't really spoken a lot for a lot of years. And I've turned around, and I've gone, he's much taller than me, big unit. And he's gone, why do you believe in God so much? I thought, oh man, not here. You know, it's a new school. There's girls at the school too, don't embarrass me, okay? Don't make me talk. But his face just suggested that he really wanted an answer. He wasn't baiting me. He wasn't looking for an argument. He was just really, what is it? What is it you've got? And I didn't want to talk to him about it there and there, but I did, because he wasn't going to let it go. And I gave my 16, 17-year-old version of what now the church calls faith and reason. It basically went along the lines of, well, my religion answers all the big questions in life for me. And I felt God through the Holy Spirit. That was all I had. That was all I had. There's much more to it than that now when I flesh it out and I go through the reasonableness of my faith. But when it comes down to it, my faith is an experience of my head. I believe it because I think it's reasonable, without the heart stuff. Without any experience of God, I think believing in God is reasonable. But it's pretty dry. But beyond that, I know that at various points in my life, I've had encounters with God and encounters with the Holy Spirit. And it doesn't matter what you say to me. It doesn't matter what would happen to me, from the best thing in the world to the worst thing in the world. I know God exists. Now, I can't prove that to you, but I can take you down the line and get pretty close. I have. And I'm not suggesting to you that I want to prove that to you. So today I want to talk about the reasonableness of theism. Atheism, put an A in front of something, you make it opposite. So it's theism to believe in God. Atheism, well, it's belief that there is no God. I think it's reasonable, and I think science is coming more and more closely back to this. Science and religion are no longer doing this. They're not going apart. The more we're discovering in science, the more they're coming closer together. Honest scientists are saying that, and people who aren't nutters about their religion, people aren't being dogmatic fundamentalists about their religion, they're saying that too. Okay. That's one thing. I then want to talk to you about Jesus Christ. Because theism is one thing, but which God? Why Jesus for you? And I want to talk to you about him as someone who I just think is so credible and is so authentic. And he requires a response of you. And just as he asked of Peter and the disciples, "Who do you say I am, gentlemen?" He's asking that of every single one of us. And at some point in your life, either now, maybe earlier, maybe when you're 70, maybe when you're on your deathbed, maybe after that, I reckon every single one of us is going to have to answer that question. My faith does make sense. My faith makes sense to me. And it makes sense to lots of other people too. And it's not a crutch. It's not something nice that's just getting me through the day. I'm quite willing to believe in the alternative of no God, but it just isn't reasonable to me anymore. And I've asked those questions. And there might be some of you asking those questions, and I'm not having a shot at you. Really, I'm not. I wouldn't do that. I think the fact that you're asking those questions is so much better than just going through your life accepting things without asking them. I think a mature faith requires those questions to be asked. But they also need to seek answers, just not wallowing in, I disagree with you. You've got to seek the answers truthfully, and you give them a chance. And so I also want to talk about the fact that our religion is more than just a head. It is a feeling, it is an experience. If God is real, then we're going to experience something. Who didn't turn their phone off? That was me. So, okay. I've got to be careful, because I like winning arguments, but it doesn't do anyone any good, least of all me. Proving the existence of God doesn't win people over to believing in God. In fact, it can alienate them. There are men who have been so interested in proving the existence of God that they came to care nothing for God himself. That could be me. Very, very much so. As if the good Lord has nothing to do but exist. He's got a lot more to do than just exist. He wants to be a reality and a purpose and a direction and a nudge daily in my life. So I'm sort of over winning arguments. Not that I won too many anyway. People convinced against their will, well, they're not going to come with you. What I do hope what I say today allows you to just maybe more freely open yourself to the reality and the possibility that this Christ person, this Christ fella, this Christ God is the real deal. I love chocolate ice cream. I absolutely love it. Grew up in a family of 5. I was the eldest. We'd always get the Neapolitan ice cream and we'd slowly cut down inside the chocolate, and there'd be vanilla left in the middle and the strawberry left on the side. I absolutely love it. I've been to places where people haven't experienced chocolate ice cream. Been in Papua New Guinea, and you don't really get to chow down on chocolate ice cream too much. I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours about what it's made of, about its colour, about its texture, how it's velvety, how it just slides down your throat. I could try and describe the taste for you, but I might win the argument that chocolate ice cream is better than your vanilla ice cream, but unless you taste it and experience it, it means nothing to you. And there are lots and lots of people who you might win arguments with about the reasonableness of God who don't experience God. C.S. Lewis is one of them. Does anyone know C.S. Lewis? He's one of my favourite authors. Him and Tolkien. And other contemporaries, like Tolkien, helped to move C.S. Lewis from atheism to belief. He basically came to an understanding in his head that God must exist, and he was dirty about it. He was filthy about it. It's like, he must exist. Until he experienced God. Okay? And he'd been one of the pin-up boys for atheism. He didn't know about that at all. Until he came to experience the Spirit. And then he wrote a book called Surprised by Joy. Okay? I want to talk to you about the fact that religion's not a crutch either. And I suppose I'm trying to present a world that I know that you're experiencing. If you believe these days, you're a mug. You're an idiot. And that, I don't care if you're in a Catholic school or a state school or a university or wherever it is, lots of people look at you like you've got two heads. It's like, what? You believe in that stuff? And in many, many ways, it's a radical choice to believe. So any notions or any sort of people pushing the fact that you believe in it's a crutch and it's an easy way to live your life, rubbish. It is harder in Western society to make a choice to believe in God and to live a life that responds to that. You know? Unfortunately, once upon a time, the arguments and the debates you have with atheists were really respectful. I've got some relatives who are atheists. I love talking to them about God. I love talking to them about their beliefs too. But the new atheists of the last 10, 15 years have just got really arrogant, they've got really rude, and they've got really dismissive. And rather than debating at an intellectual level, I've seen some great debates, they shout over the top of you, and they ridicule you, and they'll put you down and call you a mug. And that's really, I've seen that as a t-shirt, that top end one up there. I've seen that as a t-shirt. You see lots and lots of stuff like that all the time. That's okay. Christ told us that we probably encounter that. But for you as young people, and for you as young men in particular, you fear death less than you fear humiliation. That's why you hate getting up in front of a year 8 class and giving a speech. Most of us hate to be laughed at. And so the notion that this belief in God is somehow an easy option, we'll move through this pretty quickly. We've got to be conscious of the fact, though, that that's a reality for you in your lives in many instances. And I hope if you believe or you don't believe, you don't engage with people at that level. You don't engage with people at that level. And I've got to be honest, sometimes I've made that mistake. And it's not the way to go. Okay, I want to talk about science first of all. I want to talk about some of the head stuff. And I want to talk about what lots and lots of honest scientists, what lots and lots of former atheists are now saying about faith. And I make the point that they're moving to theism in large numbers. That doesn't mean they're moving to Christianity. I just want to make the point they're moving from the no-God camp to the God camp. Okay. Our church says that science and religion need each other. Science grew out of our faith. It grew out of the great universities, it grew out of the monasteries, it grew out of the thinking that comes from believers who expected a lawgiver. And they expected things in science and in nature to be repeatable and to be something you can follow easy and measure because of a lawgiver. And in a chaotic universe that lots of people think that we've come from, there is no reason why today should be exactly the same as tomorrow. There's no reason why gravity should exist today the way it did tomorrow in a universe that is chaotic. We need to be aware of arrogant science, but at the same time too, I get really frustrated by dumb religion. I get really frustrated by religion which is trying to argue points, perhaps about evolution, as some fundamentalist Christians do, that really dumbs down our faith. Because stuff like that, the stuff we're finding in science, whether it be evolution, it requires God more, not less, than some of the basic stories you hear in the scriptures. And that's not me saying that, that's our Pope saying that. Be careful of arrogant science and be careful of dumb religion. Okay? Don't dumb things down. God's better than that, you know? I'd say to you this, science more and more, at the macro level, from the most intricate parts of the far-off universe to the structure of DNA in every single cell of our body, science is moving more and more closely, just going, taking the breath away, and moving to a point of going, this did not happen by chance. This did not happen by chance. And non-belief, and this isn't me saying this is scientists saying this. I'm just reading what they're writing. Non-belief is increasingly becoming unscientific. It's becoming irrational now. I'm not talking about Christianity, I'm talking about a lack of belief in an overall intelligence that's behind all this thing. It's becoming increasingly scientific. Hopefully you know the story of the emperor with no clothes, okay? He basically got laughed at because he took the words of other people and didn't critically look at the facts as they were being presented and walked out the street thinking he was wearing a wonderful suit where he'd been sewn together a suit that was absolutely invisible and paid a fortune for it. Richard Swinburne has said this: the very success of science, it's increasing at a rapid rate, is showing us how deeply ordered the universe is. It's providing us strong grounds for believing there is an even deeper cause for that order. Scientists who deny this, scientists who sort of say, no, are really acting a bit like the emperor with no clothes. They're believing in something that maybe 30 years ago seems pretty hip and happening and kitsch. They're believing uncritically now. Sir Frederick Hoyle, major, massive pin-up boy of atheism, argued, written lots of books. In recent years has come to look at the structures of carbon and how they're linked to life and that matter that's between living and non-living, and he's basically said this: it looks as if a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces in nature worth talking about. Blind forces, well, that means this hasn't happened by chance. That's a massive thing. He goes further to say it looks as if the universe is a put-up job. It's too perfect. If it comes from chaos, it shouldn't be this perfect. He's changed his mind. It doesn't replicate and talk about this intricate order we're finding in science. Giving you lots and lots of quotes. I hope I'm not saying stuff that you're just switching on your heart. I just love this stuff. I just find it riveting that some of the smartest people in the world are coming back saying, you know what, that stuff about religion that we just threw out has been, spitting on for the past 20 years and saying that's a joke. Geez, they must be stupid, those believers. They've put the handbrake on and going, hang on. As Voltaire put it, if a watch proves the existence of a watchmaker, but the universe does not prove the existence of a great architect, then I consent to be a fool. How can we look at a watch or a camera or anything and go, wow, that must be a really major intelligence that made that. But look at the whole universe and come up with the end product that says, chance, there's nothing. And we're going to look at some numbers. I don't know if too many of you are mathematical. We're going to look at what the mathematicians are saying about what Voltaire said many years ago. Okay? 10 to the power of 81. Everyone knows what 10 to the power of 2 is. It's 100, right? Every time you add a number to it, it times it by itself again. 1,000, 10 to the power of 3. 10 to the power of 81 is the number of subatomic particles in the universe. It's apparently a really massive number. Someone else counted it. I didn't have the time. Some really smart people figured it out. Nowhere near as big as the number required for the universe to form itself suitable for life. Look at the difference between those numbers. 10 to the power of 82 is 10 to the power of 81 times itself again. Times by 10 again. That's a ridiculous number. Keep going. One chance in 10 to the power of 40,000. I want you to have a look at the difference between 10 to the power of 81. Is the figure that atheist Hoyle gets to create the basic amino acid structure. You know what amino acids are? They're the stuff that make up the DNA. Do you know how many amino acid structures make up one strand of DNA? Just a massive amount. So much so that they don't even bother calculating the odds. There's not enough time, there's not enough space in the universe for all this to happen. Understand what I'm saying there? The odds of life and of us, let alone not just DNA then constructing through evolution, whatever else, ending up as Jude Hennessy who can think and actually reflect and make sense of all this stuff happening. Forget the odds for that. For a sensate being that's got self-awareness, you haven't got a universe big enough to write the number for that will happen as far as mathematicians are concerned. Some of the atheists have gone down this line. Maybe there is God. No way. There must be a thing called a multiverse. If it can't have happened in this universe, there must be millions of universes. But as many scientists are saying, it seems preposterous. It seems really strange to say, well, there must be millions of universes in order to explain away one God. Let's say that again for you. It seems really strange that some scientists would be saying there must be millions and millions of universes to explain away one God. Denton puts it this way as a mathematician, that in reality the numbers science is coming up with are the very antithesis of chance. It's not possible, in other words. It's a fancy way of saying it's not possible. Antithesis means it's no chance. What does it equal? It equals God. A number of times I've been asked this question by students in class. One year 9 boy said, "Sir, you still believe in God? Have you heard of evolution?" They had blokes say that to me in a pub. They had blokes say that to me around a campfire. As if evolution has somehow thrown God out the window. And yet, my response to that is always this. You know what? Evolution is very, very much dependent upon God. And the story of Adam and Eve and the stuff, that's a kid's story. Talking about our relationship with God. Less so about how the world was created. They pitched it from the Babylonians 3,500 years before that. But it's a story about our relationship with God. It wasn't meant to be a science book. And yet, the more and more we're finding about evolution, the more we're finding out that evolution without God, it just ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen. Our church has recognised this. The Pope has come out and spoken about it. Been really, really wary and saying, hey, just don't accept all the stuff that science is saying. Quite rightly so, because the more we've discovered about evolution, the more we've discovered that it requires God. Not that it throws God out the window. 50 years ago, they said, no, God's dead. Yet more they're finding out about the intricacies of how it's happened, the more they're going, God is needed. That's why our church says that. It warns us about being uncritical of scientific stuff. It's for that reason that I've put this heading up here of saintly science. There's lots and lots of scientists now that are coming back and going, you know what? This God of ours is just a master physicist. He's a master mathematician. He is the creator of all of the law and order in the universe, and we're just scratching the surface about how all this is joined and about how it's so perfect. And maybe we better be a little bit less arrogant about throwing the God thing away. Not all of them. I'm not kidding myself. It's not all of them. Not all of them. And there's lots and lots of people, maybe some sitting in this audience, certainly in my experience in lots of schools who've had a little smattering of science and they think they know a lot. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you start to realise that throwing God out because of a little bit of scientific understanding, it just ain't going to cut the mustard in the end. The more you know, the more you're coming to understand that we need this God factor. Okay. Many of the writings of the scientists, you've probably heard of the word mystics and the fact that, you know, in our church there's been the great mystics and they've spoken about these awe experiences and these experiences of God that are, you know, heavenly. Science is starting to write with that in many, many ways to explain what they're discovering in our universe and within our own being, within our own cells and our own structure of DNA. We keep getting an error message. You know, when you pump too many numbers into your calculator at school, I used to love doing that. I always did it when I used to big thumbs or something. You get the error message, doesn't compute, like our brain does all the time when you look up at the stars and you think, wow, that just keeps going. You can try and keep finding an endpoint, you can't. When you try and think of infinity, your mind just goes, oh, there's got to be an end somewhere. You can't do it. Well, that's what science is continually coming up with in regards to the God stuff. That's what I'm talking about being saintly. It's starting to point us back to God. There's a whole lot of things that, and I'm going to go through this really, really quickly, but it's almost as if the universe knew where it came and did if you believe in God. And increasingly scientists are starting to go, you know what, this does look like a put-up job. Earth to sun distance, the rotation of the Earth on its axis, it's just, if it's a percentage different, it's gone. Haven't found anywhere else in the universe like it. We might, doesn't matter. We've got to go through all these other steps about life. You know, fixed orbit of 9 planets, atmospheric conditions, water, the only liquid that doesn't freeze and go to the bottom. Imagine if it did. Life on Earth wouldn't exist. Everything else freezes and goes to the bottom, floats. It's an amazing part of design that's required for life. It's amazing that one thing that we require for life is the only element that does that, and it turns too solid from liquid. I'm going to go on and on and on, and I won't. But what I'm going to say to you is that major atheists like this guy, Sir Anthony Flew, he was the atheist. He was leading the charge. He basically said, I've got to be honest, I followed science because I wanted to take the truth to wherever it leads. And you know what's leading me? It's leading me to God. His major claim was earth-shattering in 2004, that of all the great discoveries of modern science, the greatest was God. Now, he came out and said that in a debate on a stage like that against a Christian bloke, and he's turned up and gone, you know what? I now believe. So the debate changed from, I believe in God, I don't believe in God, to how he moved to believing in God. Not Christianity, mind you, that's where he's starting to move now, because of the logic and the sense of Christ and the authority with which he spoke. That would be like Cardinal Pell coming out tomorrow and going, you know what, this religion stuff, it's bunkum. I've changed my mind. Well, the Pope, if you want to say this guy could have been called the Pope of the Atheists, okay, that's what it was like. He got ridiculed from pillar to post. They called him senile, they called him ridiculous. They said, mate, you've got nothing, you must have lost your marbles. Then he wrote this book that blew them all away. It's fantastic. Love it when smart people, and he's been really sincere in his search. He's a good man. He was a good man when he was an atheist too. No better than him. He was a good man when he was an atheist too, but he's continued to be sincere in this search, and he believes. He's not the only one. He's not the only one. Enough about science. I'm arguing to you that it is reasonable to believe in God. And in fact, I would say to you that it's increasingly becoming unreasonable not to. It's becoming increasingly unreasonable not to believe in God. And doing the atheism thing, it might be cool, but you're about 35 years too late because the tide's turning. And it has been for a while. It's just that modern media and a whole lot of people haven't been stating that. At the same time, I'm under no illusion that theism, the fact that there might be a God behind all this, necessarily equals Christianity or Jesus. That's where I want to take you now. But before I do, stand up, have a stretch, and think about whether or not you've got a question for me. Stand up, have a stretch. If you're a bloke, much blood next to your shoulders, just get the blood circulating. Question, they might not, they might just go, I'm just going to let this guy run his course, run out of steam. But you might have a question. Is there anything that I've said so far that you think is unreasonable, or you get, not that I want to get into a 20-minute debate with anyone, but I'm really happy to talk to people afterwards too, if you don't want to talk to me about something I've said. Yes, mate?
If you look at some atomic part of the universe, most of the things there are chance of
yes.
Not affecting the universe while we use it.
Well, if God's in the picture, it's no longer chance. That's what I'm saying to you. If God's guiding his creation, it's no longer chance. If God is the designer of chance itself and knows what's going to happen and has set something in motion, then you're saying it's chance. If I took a ball and rolled it down that hall and hoped it went through that open door down there, I'm believing it with chance. But I'm not God. I'm not God. That's the simple answer to it. If you're relying on chance only, this universe shouldn't happen. That's what we're saying. Yeah, it's massive probabilities, so massive that we need to take chance out of the picture. That's not to say that whole things haven't occurred through chance, and over time things occurring in development. That evolutionary process, that requires God more. But that's a really good question. That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, mate.
So a lot of people say...
Did you just call me sir? I haven't been called sir for 3 years since I've been out of classroom. Thank you very, very much. You can call me Jude, because you're bigger than me. I should call you sir. I should call you sir. You'll snap me in half. Yes, sir. What's your question?
A lot of people say that, alright, there might be a God out there, but they don't think that he interacts
that's exactly right.
with the world. Like, they think he set it all in place and just watches it take.
That's exactly right. Chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say to you. Chocolate ice cream. But also, not that simplistic. When you have a look at how God's revealed himself in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there is a unique logic and almost a pre-naming of what was going to happen that defies belief. And apart from that, I know. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. But I'll take you there reasonably in your head and then ask you to be open to the Holy Spirit. Okay?
Yeah,
I know not you, or my atheist cousin, or whoever it might be. That in the end is what we have to say. You know what, guys? It's reasonable to believe And I need you to be sincere in opening yourself to the Spirit of God. And if you do, God's going to reveal himself. That's all I've got. That's an exciting journey. There's probably a little bit more than that in terms of talking about being open, and I'll talk about some of the stuff related to Christ. But in the end, it's going to come down to your own experience of God. Now, that's not going to happen. God's not going to impose himself upon you. We're going to talk about that too, the miraculous nature of God. God is not going to, why doesn't God just appear now and say, listen, I'm real, will you get over it? That's not love. And God is so awesome and so infinite and so big that if he did that, we would all have to believe that there would be no choice in the matter. Our free will is taken away. And that's not love. That's not love. That's imposed. That's an imposed understanding that God doesn't do that. And that's why it's always come as the gentle breeze and the whisper, almost the dream-like image. God doesn't enforce. That's not love. That's the opposite of love. Okay? That's the nature of God, and that's why God just doesn't. And we're going to talk about that too. Now, why doesn't God just go, hey, look, I'm here? He did try and do that 2,000 years ago, just quietly. And did lots and lots of miracles, and has continued to do miracles throughout history. And I think at some point you've just got to accept the fact that for some people, no proof will be good enough. And I'm not judging them for that. That's okay. But at some point in time too, each of us in our lives, and I think this is God ordained, will have the opportunity to either run with that or to run the other way and say, no, this proof is good enough. I want to talk about some miraculous stuff as well. Okay? Because you can't divorce the miraculous from Christianity as well. We've got to do stuff outside the scientific world. Thank you for your question, sir. Yes, mate.
Well, from the universe, like, at large, what would it do for your faith, and what do you think? How do you think the church should and would respond if we found intelligent life on our planet?
Oh, fantastic. My God is not just the God of here. My God is the God of the universe. You know? And if people say to me, well, could there be life elsewhere? I go, yeah. As if I'm going to limit my God and the understanding of my God to just us. You know? Can't do it. Can't do it. And I'd be really and our church does not say we're the only ones. Okay? It doesn't discount the fact that that could happen. Is it likely? Not when you do the maths. When you do the maths, us, life, DNA, an amoeba with no sense of proportion or understanding, it shouldn't happen. So the likelihood of it happening in the universe, regardless of how big it is, the numbers are the same. But if it were to occur, hey, he's the God of them too. Okay. Yeah. So I believe in all the Bible. I know where you're running with this, and I'll say it to you this way. Yeah, I believe the Bible is true. I believe it's the inspired word of God. Do I believe that Genesis is a science textbook? No, I don't. Do I believe that the story of Revelations is a historical account of what happened at the time of the early Christian communities? No, I don't. It's a library of books with a whole lot of things written in different ways, and some of it's poetry, and some of it's history, and some of it's story, and some of it's novel, and some of it's love songs, and some of it's narrated accounts, okay? All of which is inspired by God, but written by buffheads like me, who haven't been perfect people, but it's still have opened itself up to the Spirit. And from go to woe, within that, do we see God reaching out to us continually? Yeah. What happens in the beginning? We turn away from God, and God comes looking for us in the garden. And the rest of the story of the Bible is God coming and calling us back. We turn away, and God saying, hey, come back. Oh, no, don't get it, come back. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll send my son. I'll give you the whole, come back. That's what the Scriptures are. It's a story of God, the lover, searching for us. Do I believe in the Bible? You bet I do. Do I believe in its scientific proofs? No, it's not a science book. You like me saying to you, go home and read your Golden Book. Do you believe the scientific proofs of what you just read in that Cinderella story? And if you did, you're a mug. And that's what our church is saying about we hate dumb religion. It's got to be critical. Genesis is not a science book, it's a kid's story. And it's a kid's story with profound truth for everyone, adults included. In fact, it is the story. Okay? Good question. Good question. Yes, mate, one more, and then I'm going to keep going, and we can field some more at the end. Yeah, buddy? Yeah, sorry, yeah. You're talking about pain, suffering, all that sort of stuff in the world? Why do bad things happen? Okay, can I get down on that? Because it's the best question atheists have got, and it's the hardest question that we've got to answer, but we've got a really good answer. We've got a much better answer than the opposite question is, how can there not be a God when there is so much beauty and love in the universe? I've got an answer for theirs. They're not going to use it for mine. But I'm going to get to your question, okay? It's a good question. It's the best question they've got. They can't answer the opposite. And in philosophy, that's what you've got to do. And they can't do that, okay? You understand where I'm going with that? If you're going to ask that question, but ask the opposite. How can there be a God if there's so much pain, suffering, evil, all that sort of stuff in the world? How can there not be when you want to look at the glass half full rather than glass half empty? Okay? So I'm going to come to that question. Excellent question. Am I going too long, Father Dave? Are you happy for me to keep going? All right? Okay. Sweet. Good. This is what I think we're all seeking in our heart of hearts. We want God. Some of us know it. Some of us don't know it. That's what our church says. But I believe we're made to know God. The ultimate reality you seek has been called by many, many names, but it's God. And you think you're searching for God, but God's searching for you just as much as you're searching for God. That's the reality of our story in our faith. But faith is gift. I love my brothers. One of them in particular does not believe. He came from the same family. He sat around the same table. We went to the same school. We went to the same church. I don't know why he doesn't believe and I do. I wish he did, not because I want to win an argument, because I know what it is. I know what it's like to believe. I know the certainty it comes from. But in the end, I've got to accept sometimes too that faith is a gift. That's what our church calls it. You don't have to open it. My man gets really upset sometimes and says, gee, I just want him to believe it because I just want him to have the truth. He says, it's as if I've given him this $1 million cheque and he's put it in his back pocket and goes, that's not real. Dad's just giving me a dud cheque. That's his experience of this desiring to give people a gift. But at the same time too, he's happy when he's asking the questions. Okay, I want to go to a place called Miracle Land. Apart from all the science stuff keeps happening, has happened throughout Christian history that is miraculous. I don't want to defend Christianity because it's nice. I don't want to defend my faith because it makes everyone feel good. I want to defend it if it's true. If it's not true, then I don't care. I just happen to think it's true. But you can't have Christianity with the supernatural left out. You can't have Christianity with an understanding that the lawmaker of the universe sometimes acts outside of those laws. And there was a movement a few years ago where some trendy theologians were trying to explain away the miracles in the scriptures because they've been embarrassed of them. God is miraculous. The lawmaker can operate outside the laws of his own designs. And in fact, as a Christian, you must expect it. I expect it. I absolutely expect miracles to be happening in my life. Not massive ones. I'm not going to go and walk on water. I'm not going to do that. But help to change my heart. Or help to intervene in a situation where there's been absolute loss or healing. Or to renewing a relationship. Sometimes to changing something really dramatically. One of the most powerful miracles I've experienced was a family miracle occurred at a hospital here in Canberra. I'll tell you about that maybe at the end if you're interested. But it just, as a 13-year-old boy, just made me go, wow, that should not have happened. It made the doctors go, that should not have happened too. And I'll maybe talk about that later. It was an incredible experience. An experience that involved a whole lot of people praying, and my auntie, who should have been dead 50 times over, getting up out of bed and walking and having a shower after being in coma for 12 months and after being told she's going and almost letting her go. Anyway, it blew me away. And those experiences are not just Jude Hennessy's experiences. They're too common and they're too frequent throughout our Christendom to discount them. So many miracles. Miracles of Christ. Miracles associated with the apostles. Miracles associated with the saints. I was in our cathedral last week and there was the arm, St. Francis Xavier. Died, 500 years ago. Hasn't decayed. What's going on with that? Should be dust. St. Bernadette Siburius, the visionary from Our Lady of Lourdes. They buried her. Sweet smell was coming from the grave. She's lying now in a glass coffin for 200 years. She looks like a 22-year-old girl having a snooze. What's going on with that? Science can't explain it. They're just going, it's not embalming. Nothing's happened. It's miraculous. Lots and lots of miraculous healings. And you know what? We don't make a big deal out of it. And Jesus didn't make a big deal out of it either. He said, don't tell anyone. Go now and tell no one. Because he didn't want people to believe necessarily through miracle. He wanted them to believe through their experience of him. Mind you, there's lots and lots of pointers in the things that are miracle. There's a miracle every morning you go to Mass. That bit of bread becomes Jesus. I firmly believe that. We experience that. We experience that in adoration. We are quiet about it, and that's okay. but you can't divorce the miraculous. And you know what? We're harder on ourselves as a church about proving miracles than anyone out there is, than the Sydney Morning Herald is, or the Current Affair would be. Church makes us jump through so many hoops before we accept something miraculous. We hand it over to scientists and doctors and people who are skeptics and say, please prove that this is wrong. We will help you prove it is wrong. What can we do? And in the end, time and time again, they've got to go, we got nothing. For me, that's another proof of God's existence in our world, and you can't explain that away as a few loonies who are a little bit susceptible to believing anything, because we keep giving it to people to basically debunk it. Okay. I always think of St. Thomas. You know, doubting Thomas. I love Thomas. The fact that he goes, I'm not believing until I put my fingers in where they put the nails in his hands and his feet, until I put my hand on the side. I am not believing. We'll think, oh, good on you, Thomas. Yeah, good on you, Thomas. Absolutely. And that's what our church continues to do when we claim miraculous events, you know. But that same Thomas, once he believed it and once he'd seen it, he died for it. He went from running away from the resurrection and going, nah, that's not true, to eventually dying for it, going, no, I'm not taking it back, kill me. I'm not saying that he didn't rise from the dead. Something happened. Men don't become cowards to martyrs that quickly, unless something ridiculous has happened. Here's your question, mate, about pain. It's a really good one, and I would normally do a lecture for about an hour on this, but I'm going to cut to the chase. Atheists would say God doesn't exist, but if he does, he ain't much good. How come there's so much meaningless and pain and suffering in the world if you've got this loving God, Hennessy? Come on. How could a loving God do that? How could a loving God allow that to happen? You've got God stuff. You'll keep knowing that. And then ask the opposite question. You've got to ask the opposite question. You want to do philosophy right, if you want to ask logical questions, you've got to ask the opposite. If you can't debunk the opposite answer, which is what about all the good stuff? But I'll keep going with that. Let's say we don't ask that question. In Christianity, we've got a perfect answer. We've got a God who embraced our pain, and in fact took it on. Wasn't his fault, didn't cause it, but allows pain to happen in a universe that's imperfect, in a universe that often is rebelling against goodness, in a universe that is often rebelling against God. At a spiritual level and at a human level too. So Jesus, first of all, came, you know, God was one of us. Well, yeah, God was one of us, if you believe in Christ, and he encountered our pain. Didn't run away from it. He takes the medicine we made for ourselves. In fact, he takes it for us. Now, that's what our faith teaches. As a result, pain, death, evil, suffering doesn't have the final word. God does. And he's defeated it. And he's defeated it for me as well. That's not a good enough answer yet, I know. Not a good enough answer yet. But it's part way there. First of all, saying God understands, God encounters it, God knows the pain and suffering of our world. Doesn't cause it, but allows it to happen. If I want to walk up to you now and punch you in the face, I can. I wouldn't do that. You could do it to me too. But the fact of the matter remains, God's not going to intervene to stop that, because that's taken away free will. And that's the greatest gift he has given us. Because if you take away free will, you have taken away not only the ability to hate, but the ability to love. You can't have one without the other. But this is the whole story of us, is this story of us being willing to respond to the will of God, rather than our own will. Okay? In effect, the atheists, by arguing against God because of pain and suffering, are looking for or demanding a God that creates in us the ability to love without giving us the option to reject that love, without giving us the option to hate. You can't love without hating. You, me, everyone, Adolf Hitler, Mother Teresa, Pope Benedict XVI, Pol Pot, all have great potential to do evil. But we also, every single one of us, have great potential to be saintly. It's the choices that we make. And that's the freeing part. The freeing part is this free will that God gives us. The privilege of making a choice and the ramifications of that choice. I'm going to tell you a really simple story that I tell people when they want me to give them a reason why God allows pain. There's this condition called congenital insensitivity to pain with anhydrosis. It's very rare, probably 300-400 cases in the world. People with this disease feel no pain, nor do they sweat or shed tears. So about 100 cases, no more, but probably 300 cases all up when they're unknown. Little kids with this are fearless. I'll throw them a football and tell them to run that ball, they'll run at that ball. They'll break every single bone in their body and they will not feel it. They'll get an itchy eye and they'll scratch it until they're blind. The parents of these children have one wish, that their children will feel pain, so that they'll stop hurting themselves and stop hurting other people. They don't want them to feel it really because they want to encounter pain, just because they want them to know what they're called to in existence, what life's supposed to be. Pain, as far as we are concerned, this is why I love the church giving me the answers. The church has given answers to all these big questions for me. Is the consequence of it. Sometimes that I've brought upon myself or that someone else has done, I don't know, maybe from generations ago. Maybe from generations ago. Maybe there are people living in Germany still encountering pain, suffering, torment from what happened to their great-grandparents in Nazi Germany. It doesn't go away, it doesn't die with the fathers and the grandparents. Sometimes pain just keeps going, like ripples on a big lake, you know. But it has a purpose. Pain has a purpose. It's so meaningless if it hasn't got a purpose. But if you put God into the picture, pain can have a purpose. I think that purpose very much is bringing us back to God. Very much bringing us back to God. I don't know about you, but at times when I've been sometimes disconnected with God, I've had to have a really big event in my life where I've gone, you know what? I need God back. And sometimes that's been painful. Sometimes that's been events in my life or our family's life where we just have to go, Jesus, we need to pray. We need to return to this. If we're being disconnected, sometimes pain is a way of getting you back on track. This guy's great, Chester. He's this Catholic layman author. Funny as, really, really brilliant. If you ever get a chance to read some of his stuff, do. He said this about pain. He said, it's not pain that brings meaningless, it's too much pleasure. Pain in the end, you know, we can cope with. But what if you've got everything you ever want? All the riches, all the drugs, all the relationships, the money, success, power. What if you experience all that and you know what? It still comes up short. That's real pain. Pleasure is the thing that gives the definite meaning opposite. And you've got both, you've got pain, but also extremes of pleasure. What if there was no pain and everything was just perfect for us all the time? But no God. He's saying with that, that's when you get real into this. So in response to that question, how can there be God when there's so much suffering in the world? He said, you know what, you're asking the wrong question. Meaningless doesn't come from being weary of pain, but being weary of pleasure. Having too much, and then it's just going, you know what, it's not enough. This isn't cutting it. This isn't giving me what I want. And our church says it's not giving you what you want, because it's not God. And in the end, that's what you want. What you want is God, this massive, infinite, eternal being who can't love you any more and can't love you any less. There's nothing you can do. Look me in the eye. There's nothing you can do to make him love you any more, and there's nothing you can do to make him love you any less. I'm talking about eating chocolate ice cream here again at the moment because I've experienced that. And I can't eat chocolate ice cream for you. That's St. Augustine. That's my middle name. Jude Peter Hennessy. How Catholic's that? Why wouldn't you be religious? I'm just going to throw some figures at you. If you want to do surveys, lower rates of serious illness, generally better mental health. Not always, not all the time. Some of us go through the ringer. Generally much better well-being. Lower rates of dependency, lower rates of addiction. Generally better educated. Generally really critical thinkers. Believers aren't dummies. They're usually pretty highly educated. I'm talking on a worldwide basis here. They're doing better financially. I don't know why. I'm not talking about an evangelical American chasing money and believing in God. That sort of routine. But there's something about their drive and their purpose and their willingness to sacrifice. High rates of goal achievement, a life of purpose and meaning? If I said I could give you a pill and give you all of those things, you'd go, give it to me now. And yet I'm telling you that all the statistics are saying to us that young people that have got that, they're just doing better. Why? I just happen to think it's because of what Augustine said. Because we're meant to have God close to us. Doctrine. I'm the director of the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine. That's my job in the Diocese of Wollongong for Bishop Peter. It's a big term, isn't it? Doctrine. It means we go around and teach kids in state school. It's got to become a bit of a dirty word, doctrine. Like you're indoctrinating people. You're taking away their choice. You're taking away their freedom. And yet doctrine means truth. You got a doctorate. You understand doctrines. And they call you a doctor of medicine or of philosophy or whatever it might be. And yet, often I'm hearing in our society today that we should just let young people make up their own mind about God. And we should, but it doesn't mean you teach them the head stuff and let them experience the heart stuff. If you all grow up in 10 years' time, some of you in 10 years' time definitely could have kids. 15 years' time, you could have kids start at school. I would think it would be ridiculous for you to be thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to send my kids to school, but you know what? I don't want them doing that math stuff because I'd rather wait till they get to their 15, 16, maybe even 20, and they can make up their own mind about whether that math stuff is credible and true or not. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it with science. You wouldn't do it with the way that we engage with language. You wouldn't do it with anything that we teach, and yet somehow we have this standoffish approach to religion and faith, and yet it's come through from traditions of my grandparents and my great-grandparents and their great-grandparents who believe it's true and set it work in their lives, but all of a sudden in the last 50 years we've gone, you don't force it on you. I don't know why you wouldn't want to give your kids some sort of an aspect to this stuff so they can make up their own mind if that's the result. And it is the result. And people who don't believe start doing the opposite. Not always, but often in the end they get to a point in their lives and they go, no, this is not cutting the mustard for me anymore. Why else? You know what? Because of what they produce. Believers just have good fruits. I think we're meant to as human beings. And I do see God in the lives of believers. I see some people who believe too, who are not showing it. That's a reality as well. There's some terrible things happening in our church at the moment. Every second time I read the paper, I get embarrassed. Year of grace. Year of disgrace in many ways. Some of the stuff we've seen in the papers. But God's still in the midst of that. And the church and some of the things that are going on in our church, that doesn't equal God's love for his church or our relationship with God. Nothing comes close to what believers, not just Christianity, but people who believe in God, what they contribute to our world. More than the United Nations, more than all the governments of the world combined, and what we contribute in terms of social justice, in terms of giving, I suppose, some sort of relief to the poor and contributing to really good causes and giving of our time and giving of our energies to help other people. Why? People of faith are generally 3 times more likely to be involved in this sort of stuff. That says something to you about what's going on inside. Something good that's going on inside. Non-believers say that. Atheists say that. And you go, what is that? And yet I put this statement up there too. God help the world if the atheists ever came to dominate our world and our thinking. They almost did in some ways in Nazi Germany and communist Russia. And the result was definitely survival of the fittest. You've only got to look at the death camps to know that. Jesus, here we go. He was pre-announced. This is why I believe it. He was pre-announced. So many different prophecies in the Old Testament. He was pre-announced and we were told he was coming. And we were told what he would do when he get here. And then he did them. All these prophecies that you tick off as being true. I can't go through them all now. It'll take like 5 hours. Ridiculous. Want to do the odds for that? Mathematicians had done the odds for that and said, this is ridiculous. This shouldn't have happened for any one person. The miracles he performed. No one ever tried to say they didn't occur. They just tried to say he must be the son of the devil to be able to have power over these spirits or to be able to do this and that, or he's a magician. But they never denied that what he was doing was real. He said stuff that no one had ever said before. And he did it with authority. And he did it in a way that knew the Old Testament and knew the mind of God. And you'd expect that because we call him the Word of God, which is what we call the Scriptures anyway. The Word made flesh. He said some insane things. He's either the Son of God or he's a nutcase. He doesn't give you middle ground. He's not a nice bloke with some good ideas. He's either the Son of God or he is a dead set loony. And he said he rose from the dead. And he made some outrageous claims about who he was. Everything in the Scriptures and post the Scriptures tells us that he backed that up. I read this book when I was about 15. It was my uncle's. It was called Who Moved the Stone? And it was the story of this American lawyer who was looking at what happened in all of the gospel accounts. They basically said, well, that moving of the stone in front of the tomb, someone else did that. This wasn't a real event. And yet the further he dug and the further he got into it, for me as a young man, grappled with a whole lot of questions, and mates tapped me on the shoulder and touched upon saying, why do you believe this stuff? I left convinced, and so did he. In writing the book, he gets halfway through and he goes, you know, I can't do this anymore. This happened. And that resurrection event is the critical event in history. Because if it didn't occur as a liar, it did occur as a Son of God. If it did occur, he's with me right now. And it's not just some little crutch that I need to lean on. His Spirit, the creator of all this, the master of the universe, is right here. That's a pretty cool feeling if you believe it. And I believe it. I really want you to believe it. Because it's an amazing feeling. Jesus asked it of Peter, he asked it of all his apostles, and so Peter said, they're all going, oh, I think you're Elijah, I think John the Baptist come back to life, oh, I think you're a big one. But Peter says, I think you're the Son of God. And he goes, it's the Holy Spirit that revealed that to you. You are a rock, on this rock I'll build my church. And you know what, no? After Jesus was put to death, the disciples all ran away. They didn't expect the resurrection. If they did, they'd have been camping out outside the tomb. Who camped outside around the tomb? The people who hated him. The people who wanted him dead. The Jews and the Romans were the ones that guarded outside the tomb. The rest of them just gone, we're out of here. No, get out of here. All they had to do with discount the resurrection was produce a body. And they tried to do that by guarding the tomb. And that was the fallback, because he said he's going to rise from the dead. And that's not just in our Christian writings. This is in other writings as well. This isn't us making good of the story that we wanted to happen. More to the point, cowards to martyrs. Good men will die for people. Good men will die for a good cause. But people, very rarely, no one is going to. In fact, I'd say never will someone die for a lie. It just ain't worth it. And yet you have all of these apostles coming back. I'll just have that time. Thanks. None of these guys were willing to do anything except put their life on the line after they received the Holy Spirit and after the resurrection, going, you know what, he did rise from the dead. Yes, you can kill me. You can kill me 10 times. I'm not taking back the fact that he rose from the dead. Because they saw him, they spoke to him. In some instances, 500 people at a time saw him. Not one or two in a quiet room. In fact, it became so big, so quick, Christianity, the only explanation for it is that he appeared in large numbers of people, and the Jews were getting really, really worried. That's what they said about trying to silence these Christians as quickly as they could. Never mind all that, Holy Spirit really counts. The apostles had it. I reckon I've had it. I know I've had it. I reckon some of you have had it too. And if you haven't, you've got to open yourself up to the power of the Holy Spirit. Because if you do that, nothing will unconvince you of the reality of God. Nothing I said to you before about all those maths and statistics, none of that's going to convince you. It might help you get there, but once you experience the Holy Spirit, that's it. I don't care if I get to be 115. Those experiences I've had in my life, even if I never have another one of them again, I know God exists. Okay. I've had those experiences. I know I'm loved in the family. I know I'm forgiven. I know I need it. I absolutely know I need it. I'm so imperfect. That's the great thing about being loved by the Son of God. He gets to forgive. That's his right. I expect God to be present every day, and miracles are not uncommon. If I could just another half an hour and talk to you about all the things that have been answers to prayer in life. I'm going to finish up pretty quickly. Thanks. Why doesn't God just overwhelm us? Why doesn't he just appear? Well, for these reasons. The Christian worldview of faith is that God has put enough in this world to make faith in him a most reasonable thing. But he's left enough out to make it impossible to live by sheer reason alone. I can't do this as a head thing. That's too easy for God. I need to do it as a heart thing too. Why not overwhelm us? Because it's not in God's nature. He doesn't dominate. He doesn't come over the top of. He doesn't go bang. They believe me now. No, that's not God's way. That's not the way of love. Because it would remove free will from the equation. If you remove free will from the equation, I can't choose to love him or to hate him. I've just got to go, there you are. And that's not relational. Now God is relational. So God gives us enough evidence for the dance of two lovers to begin. Hopefully I've given you a bit of evidence here that if you don't believe, we're unsure, we go, man, yeah, we go nuts forever, mum and dad maybe do this, but man, is it real? Am I just copying this because it's, I don't know, traditional? Maybe that's where you're at. That's good. But keep asking the questions and opening yourself to the Spirit, because I'm telling you, God will not let you down. If you're asking the questions and sincerely and truly being open to God in prayer, He'll answer the questions. All right, my conclusions are this, and then we'll get some questions, unless Dave says, Jude, you're a big mouth and you've talked for too long. God has to exist. Believers are not stupid. Belief is credible and valid. I believe that, and I think scientific endeavour is coming to that. I think atheism is increasingly bankrupted and bereft of meaning. And you can't call something good or bad if you're coming from an atheistic point of view. Good or bad, right or wrong, all that sort of stuff is just a human construct. Science, from the biggest stuff out there as far as we can go in space to the smallest thing we can see, in the most tiny cells, is saying God exists. God loves and pursues us. Gee, I know that. Even when we run away, He's still chasing us. You'll let us say no. You'll let us say no. Jesus is definitely the real deal. I know Him. I don't do the imaginary friend thing. But like eating chocolate ice cream, I can only tell you about that. And you'll only go, Jude, I'm with you, if you taste the chocolate ice cream. And you might not do that a number of times in your life if it's been a while since you had a taste of chocolate ice cream. And for me, and for Jesus, and for the church, and hopefully for you, that question becomes the critical question in your life. Who do you say I am? Because if you end up with the answer of the Son and God, you end up with the answer of the Son of God, it requires a response for you that shouldn't weigh you down. It requires a response from you that should just absolutely set you free. Because that Son of God who made all this, not that in there, is in you. And that's pretty cool, and that's pretty powerful. So pray, do the hard thing, read, do the head thing, go to the sacraments. God's there. I tell you, God is so powerful in our sacraments. Talk to your mates. Talk to people who believe. Talk to people who don't believe. Pray some more. It's the most important thing. And think critically. Because this is all about faith and reason. God love you for letting me talk to you. I hope I haven't bored you too much. And I'm going to open myself up to some questions now. But thank you for listening to me ramble on for so long. Thank you. Questions, comments, mud throwing, anything? Yes?
Are Christians required to leave all pain is purpose?
Is all pain purposeful? No. Are you, now I'm just going to ask you a question back to you. Are you saying to me that God is allowing pain and turns pain, allows pain to happen so that it creates something else in our life? No. What I think our God is saying, regardless of the situation, grace can turn a bad situation and a bad experience into something that leads us to God. That's what I'm saying. That's what our church would say. Does God make it happen to make us return? If I'm driving home today and I have a car accident because I'm a mug and I'm on a text on my mobile phone, and I'm in pain for 6 months or in a wheelchair or paralysed, and eventually I'll come back to God. Has God allowed that to happen? No, but He'll use it. He'll use it if I'm open to it. Is that a fair enough answer? Thanks. Yes?
God, just like Joseph found, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
Didn't He do that in the Old Testament, sort of?
Yeah, plenty of times. And He's done it plenty of times in the New Testament as well. And He's done it in places like Fatima, where there was thousands and thousands of people who saw the miracle of the dancing sun. And lots of times post our era. And in the film footage of Padre Pio getting the stigmata every single day and disappearing and reappearing while he's saying Mass in the 1960s and 70s. Yes, they're there, and it's there for all to see, but it's not enough. Because in the end, just as it was in Jesus' time, he performed lots of miracles, not just for his mates, for all to see, and he got criticised for it by people going, you should be doing miracles on the Sabbath. Miracles weren't good enough. Miracles weren't good enough. And you know what? Probably not good enough for us as well. What's good enough for me is I know him. That's what's good enough. Miracle or not? Miracle or not? Good question. I like the bang thing, and it's happened lots and lots of times. But you know what? God in the end goes, in 200 years' time, someone's just going to go, they were nuts. They were in olden days when people were really susceptible to being duped or being kind. That's what we do. That's what we do. Questions? Questions? About anything. It doesn't have to be about what I've spoken about. This is what I used to do in my RE classes. Okay, guys, what can you listen to? What do you want to ask? Yeah. Free will is the.
Let's do with chaos. I think that's part of the explanation. People always mention natural disasters.
Yeah, good. No, that's a good question. People then say, well, okay, that's a human example where humans make choices that have an impact on our own choices. What about in our universe where there are natural disasters? That's a really good question. Again, God allows that to happen, and we look at a natural disaster like a tsunami or a volcanic eruption and go, you know what, that's really terrible. That kills tens of thousands of people or whatever it did. But actually, without that sort of stuff too, there's no life. So it's a catch-22 situation. In a universe that's declining, sometimes bad things happen for new life to occur. I don't understand that, but my answer to that is better than the atheist's answer of why do good things happen. I'll say it this way too. Okay? I'm going to go to a supernatural level, rather than just what you and I can see. There's stuff going on in a spiritual level, as regard to spiritual warfare is concerned, that we're not seeing. We don't know the battles that are going on around us in our world and in our universe, but I have no doubt that they're having an impact upon what is happening in our world and our universe. That's the nature of the spiritual battle between God and the forces that hate God. And they're a reality too. We understand and we experience evil. Some of it is evil that we have created ourselves. Some of it's just evil. Some of it's just evil. It doesn't have its origins in what humanity's responded to. And that can have an impact upon our universe. And sometimes that has ramifications for us as humanity and for our world and our universe. It's cooling down. Our universe is cooling down. There's going to be a beginning and an end. And associated with that, there's sometimes going to be things breaking off and going wrong. The thing about believing in God is God's got the power to overcome that. Death, is that what you've got? The worst thing you can do to me is kill me. I don't know much. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going. So death, where is your sting? That's the Christian cry. But for an atheist or a non-believer, I can see why they'd ask that question with despair. I don't face that question with despair. I face it with, yeah, is that all you got? I know where I'm going. Yeah. Well, I love vanilla ice cream. I just like chocolate ice cream more. As you can tell. Any other questions? Okay, if you want to come and have a chat to me after this, because you've been sitting down for a long time and you've been really attentive, thank you for letting us come down here and talk to you. I hope you have a really good rest of your explosion camp week experience with each other. But can I just leave you with one thing? In your prayer time, if you're doubtful about all this sort of stuff, start opening yourself up to the Holy Spirit. Challenge God. Man, I don't know about this. Reveal yourself to me. Chocolate ice cream. Thank you very much.